Adesso io vorrei accogliere con un grandissimo applauso la premiata di questa edizione del Premio Bruno Leoni, signore e signori, Deirdre McCloskey. Hello, welcome. It's a great honor to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
It's quite heavy, but I can keep it for you. And I'll promise I'll give it back later, okay? Okay.
I don't want to drop it.
Okay, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Deirdre. Well, thank you so much. I have a speech defect, which you'll have to grow accustomed to or run screaming from the room. Fortunately, Italy is still a free country. If you want to run screaming from the room, that's okay. I'm greatly honored by this gift and this extraordinary turnout. I would speak in your language, ma sono americana, and the joke is that a person who knows 3 languages is trilingual. The person who knows 2 is bilingual. Person who knows 1 is an American. I love Giacomo Leopardi, sempre caro mi fu quest'ermo cole, e questa siepe che da tanta parte dell'ultimo rasante il guardo esclude. I have stood at the very spot and worshipped. So I admire Italian. I admire Italy immensely, and I admire its borghese above all. It's middle class and its bourgeois traditions, which formed a sort of a basis for the revolution that I think happened. Joel slightly disagrees with me, Joel Mokir, in northwestern Europe in the first place, in Holland and then in England and Scotland and the North American colonies and then in Belgium. And what was this? What was this thing that made us eventually so rich? Was it the intervention of the government? Was it in industrial planning? Was it the great leap forward, as the Chinese expressed it? No. It was individual action. It was, as von Mises, the great Austrian economist, said, personal action. It's not a terrible surprise that innovation comes from people. It comes from ordinary and extraordinary individuals. It doesn't come from massed groups of individuals, whether from corporations or from governments, as necessary as they may be for some purposes. The great spring of innovation was a change in attitudes towards innovation. That's the key point of my 3 volumes. I'm going to give you here what we call in the United States an executive summary. That doesn't exempt you from buying the books and reading them. That's your homework for the next 6 months, because they're very long. But it's individual creativity that made the modern world. Now, humans have always been creative. They created the wheel, they created writing, they created the inferno nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita, mi trova, etc., etc. But before 1800, the pace of innovation was rather dignified and slow, and was slowed down by the elite, by the aristocracy and the church, conspiring against any change that might disturb their power. And this was worldwide. It wasn't just in Europe, it was in China, in the Ottoman Empire, in South Asia, and elsewhere. What changed then? I offer you tonight the idea that what changed was liberalism. What changed was the idea, as Adam Smith, the blessed Adam Smith, said, the liberal plan of equality, liberty, and justice. Now, it may surprise you to hear Adam Smith talking about equality, but of course he didn't mean equality in Thomas Piketty's sense. He didn't mean equality of results. He wasn't in favor of dramatic redistributions of income, which you can show, and I show in my books, would help the poor for 1 year. What makes the poor rich, what made the ancestors of everyone in this room, I'm sure, 99% of the ancestors in this room, including me, were extremely poor. Yet here we are. Here we are at this occasion. By equality, Adam Smith meant equality of dignity. That's embodied in the Italian Constitution. It's one of the few clauses in your Constitution that you haven't changed since the late 1940s. And it says that every Italian, male and female, rich and poor, have equal dignity. So that's equality. Liberty is what so many of you in this room exercise. And if you want it to be protected in future, you should give to the Istituto Bruno Leoni. You really should. What it meant in Adam Smith's mind was the right to start an enterprise, to invent, and indeed it goes along with a free press and freedom of art and music. Imagine a Europe in which liberty of expression was crushed, and you imagine an end of enterprise, and you imagine a Europe that would not have grown and would be a slave society still. And then finally, justice, by which Smith meant equal justice before the law. That's obvious, very imperfectly expressed in Italy or the United States or Britain. It's imperfect. The rich often have easier access to equality before the law, but the principle remains. Look, that man who wrote the phrase, all men and women, dear, are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, among which is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This great sentence in America's Declaration of Independence was an owner of slaves. He kept his own son by Sally Hemings in slavery. So the progress of these three ideals of equality, liberty, and justice, the very definition of a free society and a free economy, is always under threat, is always very slowly achieved. It's only recently, historically speaking, that women have had rights. In the 18th century, kings had rights and women had none. Now it's the other way around. So it's a slow progress. But we meet tonight to continue the ongoing development of liberty, of free societies. I've spent much of my life, as so many of you have, advocating for it. I have to say that as a young person, I was a Marxist. Quasi. I was what you might call a Joan Baez Marxist. I sang the folk songs, you know, arise, you prisoners of starvation. And so I was a kind of a soft Marxist, a Marxist who had read perhaps half of the Communist Manifesto. But I drifted, as so many people do, from the kind of generous, leftism that so many of us start with when we're adolescents, to what I fancy is a mature understanding, more mature, if not perfectly mature. So I urge you to continue your struggle for liberal ideas. I must say, I urge you to at least buy my books. I won't insist that you read them. They're very long. But we together can make Italy and the United States and China and India, and I'm most hopeful about India, into rich and free places. I must say I'm quite surprised that there aren't more Istituto Bruno Leonis in Italy. You'd think there would be one in every small town in Italy, and the majority of the parliament would be liberal. Because every sentient Italian knows that sending more money and power to Rome is a bad idea. Certo, it's obvious. Yet they continue to vote in ways that keep money and power flowing to Rome. And in my country, to Washington. So however the American election turns out tomorrow, let's pray for a liberal society. Thank you very much.